everybody. Welcome to the first episode of Let's Talk Markets. I'm Pink, and I'll be your host, along with my co-host, Mr. Dave Lauer. So thanks for joining us. What's up, Dave?
Hey, Pink. How you doing?
Doing awesome. I was really getting into that talk you had with Gary Gensler last week. So on top of whatever else is on your mind, I am super excited to be kind of going over that. That was a lot to ingest in what, 45 minutes or an hour. You really crammed a lot in there. So super excited to be talking about that. What was that like? So now you've talked to him twice. Do you feel like you're getting somewhere talking to Gary one-on-one?
I think so. I think it's I think it's a big deal. I know that I've seen the reaction online from individual investors who appreciate it, but I can tell you I talked to a lot of people in the industry, and a lot of them are amazed that he's even doing it, and they respect the content. I've gotten, some people don't think we ask hard enough questions. I assure you, people in the industry are kind of shocked at some of the questions that that are being put to him, and I think he's a great sport about it. Like he seems to want to really engage, and he likes explaining things. I think he could do a better job of providing deeper answers. Like he's a politician.
Yeah, the politician in him, he's definitely a squared answer. Getting right around those hard-hitting questions. But
it's really unique. I think this is a unique situation to be in. That and I keep using that word, but it is somewhat unprecedented that he's willing to do this. No SEC chair has done something like this before. And that he's being. It's not just like a one-on-one thing. It's bringing in people to ask their questions, to have conversations, to provide information to him about what they care about. I think it's great. We had a half-hour conversation on FTDs and DRS, and because that's what people care about. They want to know that the SEC is aware of these issues. They want the SEC to know that individual investors are opting out of the system and why. And they would like the SEC to address those issues, and I really think that it's going to make a difference. And you might not see it when you're watching the Q&A and you see him, skirting around some things, but really listening and taking it in. But I think what you will see, and what he offered, which we plan on taking him up on, is to have SEC staff engage directly with the community, to hear from them, to learn from them, to teach them, to talk to them, and that's where I think real change happens, when you can engage the staff of the SEC, and provide them a different perspective. Right? They are used to meeting with Robinhood and Schwab and E-Trade, and they are used to meeting with Citadel and Virtu and JP Morgan and Deutsche Bank. They're not used to meeting with retail investors. And yet,
exactly.
That's a major part of the SEC's mission, and a major part of why markets have ended up designed as they are. Rightly or wrongly, the arguments that people like Bernie Madoff made when he was pushing for these kinds of regulations and this kind of system, these arguments said, this is the best thing you can do for the retail investor. And this is how to create a market that is so good for retail. And that's what Virtu and Citadel say. Robin and Schwab, they're like, everything is great for retail, right? And then, you bring in retail investors and they're like, what are these people talking about?
Exactly.
Everything is not great.
Yeah, exactly. And we're pulling up in our flip-flops, eating a banana, and we're like, hey, can we sit at this table and, have a real conversation about our own opinions? It's, we don't get political on this show. We won't be. But it is very similar to, any political situation where you're trying to create effective change and real change, and just getting to, the politicians and the people in charge is a major accomplishment. That's a roadblock down that, a lot of people in situations don't get, an opportunity that just doesn't come along every day. So absolutely, just having a seat at the table to get to speak and plant these little earbuds in his mind, even if Gary Gensler's not responding directly to the things that we're bringing up to him, we're at least getting into his head. And I like that. I like that we're getting, kind of the Reddit hive mind has broken the walls, because that's where we met, and that's where a lot of people are familiar with us from, is through Reddit. So I like to see that bleeding out now into regulation, because it definitely all that energy applied can create super effective change.
It's a
So
big deal, and this is how it happens, and it's never as fast as people want it to be, but slowly, brick by brick, right, inexorably,
absolutely.
we're pushing forward, and the SEC is pushing forward with some really big changes, and some very powerful firms are pushing hard against those changes. And I think he was very clear about that point in both times that we sat down with him. He said the SEC hears from these firms. They hear a lot from these firms. These firms have DC lobbyists. They have government relations offices. They've got whole staffs working on these issues, making sure the SEC hears from them. And the fact that now the SEC is hearing directly from retail, and the fact that retail cares enough to come into comment files of new rule proposals and really flood those comment files, it's a big deal, and every comment matters. Everyone counts. And so, I think he was looking to us. He wants these rule proposals to pass. There's no doubt about it, right? Yeah. And he knows that he needs the support of individual investors, and that's the X factor here. That's what hasn't been a part of this process in the past, and that's the thing that can make the difference here. I really think he sees that, and I think that's why he's engaging with us, and I just think that's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, we can't be ignored at this point. And we being just the greater retail investment community, it's amazing to watch it go from what was accused of being a small echo chamber for a while, and conspiracy theorists and all of this, to now, MOAS or no MOAS, we need to create change. This is really what it's all about. At the end of the day, is this can't happen again. We've uncovered so much in the last 2+ years. People like you've been, in this for decades, but it's just crazy to see it go full evolution now to now facing these issues head on, and talking to him about PFOF and things that it's like that does not work in our markets anymore. So,
and how do you like him teasing that they go on Reddit and they read the research?
Listen, it's crazy to think that, in the last 2 years we were conspiracy theorists again. It's like you felt a little bit like, tinfoil hat, but it's like, I think the SEC actually reads what we're saying. Like they're responding in their own way. And now that we're having this direct conversation with them and them confirming that that's exciting, because the fact that we are engaging outside of our little bubble, that means that we're headed in the right direction. The fact that they're responding, and also a saying that gets thrown around a lot in the community, that in gaming, you come across an enemy, then you're going in the right direction.
That's
right. So that opposition is good. And I'm with you that I think Gary, yes, he's one of them in a lot of ways. That's how it looks to your everyday person, your everyday investor. But also, I think he sees what's wrong. He knows what's wrong. He's been talking about it since pre-2008. But he just needs us to back him up. Like you said, that's the real X factor. And if we could turn Reddit and Twitter comments into SEC comments, they would be blown away at the engagement. So I think it's great.
Last week it wasn't just about Gensler, but there, Jon Stewart had his first live stream, and he chose for his first live stream to cover this topic and to focus on it. And I thought the other guest on there, David Dian, was really great, and he said something, to that point. He was like, and he's a skeptic, as John is of regulators, of the SEC. Everyone is, and I'm certainly one too. But he made the point. He's like, you would not have seen anything like this coming out of Jay Clayton's SEC. Jay Clayton was the SEC chair before Gensler. He's like, you wouldn't have seen anything like this coming out of Obama's administration. This is it's really unique. It's unusual to have the SEC willing to take on these powerful firms and willing to do it because they want to improve markets, and they're willing to take the flack from the industry, and they're willing to get sued and invest, substantial resources out of what is a limited pool to push really transformative changes in markets. And I think that was a really excellent observation on his part, because it does speak to whatever you think of Chair Gensler, whatever you think of his background and, what he has done or not done up until now. It doesn't change the fact of, what are the actions that he's taken, and reforming markets to make them competitive, to open them up, and to get all of this trading out of the wholesalers in the dark markets and onto lit exchanges where they impact the MBBO, and where that pressure can be felt. That's a big deal.
Right. And even the acknowledgement, right, of the fact that a quarter or a third of retail trades are going to the dark markets. Just the acknowledgement from him is something, I think, and we need to crawl before we walk and walk before we run, right? As far as change goes, and not demanding too much, and just being satisfied with what we're getting, the feedback that we're getting from him, and doing what they're asking, engaging with them directly. That's so vital. So many movements, so to speak. I always hesitate to refer to this as a movement. Some people do, but it is in a lot of ways. But anyway, whenever things start to gain momentum, one or another wrench gets thrown into the spokes, and it kind of dissolves. And I mean, look at Wall Street, that Occupy Wall Street in 2008. Something always comes along that kind of makes people lose their steam, and that's not happening with this. People, if anything, are gaining momentum. We're discovering more about DRS. We're talking more about FTDs and talking about these things that really would create the most effective change, the most immediate change. That's really encouraging to see, and I hope we don't lose that steam. And that's kind of what we're working towards. You're working towards with We the Investors, through Irvin Education, and through, I know, like ydrs.org. I'm really into what those guys are doing and getting that message out. It's just really awesome to see. Like, this is becoming something besides essentially a Reddit community, or a Twitter community.
Right. So. No, I mean, people are fed up, and they wanted to see things change quickly. And it's a good thing things don't change quickly, because you want it to change quickly because you have a vision for how it could change in a good way. But a lot of people have a vision of how it could change to benefit them. And if it changed quickly, when you're not paying attention, they might be able to quickly change it. So, but I think people have learned over the years now is that, there is a process to engage in, and, there's a reason there's that process exists, and it's to make sure everyone gets heard, and that regulators try and make the best choices that they can. And I think when people saw it not changing quickly, you saw multiple reactions in the community, and one reaction is certainly, forget this, that let's just blow the whole system up, and we need revolution. And it's almost like I don't even necessarily disagree with that. I don't think it's likely. I don't think it's a practical solution. But, people are welcome to do that, and they're welcome to work hard to change this, to transform the system if that's what they want. But I think the majority saw, okay, we can't change it overnight, but that we can change it over time. And let's do what we need to do, and let's stay engaged, and let's work hard, just like the other side is, and we'll beat them at their own game. And I think that's where we're at, and I couldn't be happier about it. I just think it's an amazing thing that people care and they're engaged now, and we are changing the system because of that.
But it's a paradigm shift, right? Like in retail investors, it's got to be a paradigm shift, because the market makers and the hedge funds and everybody, they don't have lobbyists and all of this that just play one game of ball and then go home, like take their ball and go home. They're at this always. Like you said, this is a budgeted expense annually on all of their annual budgets that says we've got to, keep the status quo.
Yeah.
And we have to stay at the table. We can't just say, okay, well, we played a great game this week. That's it. Let's hope things change. I mean, this is an ongoing, shift, like I was saying. So it's just so important to keep that mindset as a retail investor that wants to see that happen,
Yeah,
that we keep chipping away at this and we don't lose steam. So
yeah. I mean, that's it. Again, like Jon Stewart said it last year in the Twitter space after the episode came out. He said they're counting on us to lose stamina, to
mhm.
to give up, and to go home. And as long as we don't do that, we're going to see things change the way we think that they should. Because we're going to, I think we're right. I think we're here with the right ideas and the right arguments, and even better is that this movement is what you would call independent. It's not like it's a movement that is advocating for changes that will benefit and the people involved. Like, it doesn't matter to Irvin any which way how the market works, essentially. It doesn't matter to most individual investors really any which way. The changes are it's like maybe it's not that it doesn't matter to individual, but it's like the market improving is the thing that individual investors want to see, and that's the thing I want to see. And
Right.
all of these other firms who are pushing back against those changes are doing so because it threatens revenue streams, and that's not the case here, and that's a pretty unique position to be in as well.
Absolutely. It's a new age way of going about
Yeah,
change
because people
and
care,
activism.
right? Like people discovered all of this, and
Thousands of
after what they
hours
saw.
volunteered and people
Yeah,
poured
that's right,
thousands
exactly.
upon thousands of hours of due diligence and educating each other and sharing knowledge and cross-referencing and just everything coming together so organically.
Yeah,
It is a revolution of sorts, and I
yeah,
think that's awesome
yeah,
because we
right.
we're not the paper traders of the 1940s and 50s, and like we don't. Gosh, most investors don't even know how things used to work or where terms like the direct registration system or what paper
Yeah,
certificates really are, or how things used to work, or why is it T+2, why not T+0, which we can get into in a little bit. But
yeah,
it's just it's a new age of investing from a generation that has always had technology at our disposal. So we expect things to keep up with that, but to play fair, we want transparency. So
yeah. No, that's right, and I think that's the difference maker is that this new generation that has come into the market cares about things. It's not strictly, let's say, a dollars and cents issue like it has been for the boomers and such, right? They generally only care about one thing: ruining the world and making money, right? But like,
right, bleed it dry and put it in my pocket. Yeah.
let me tell you how I feel about boomers. But no offense to the boomers listening, because I'm sure you're all awesome.
Hey, you're never too old to hold,
Awful.
okay?
but
Right.
there's no doubt that younger generations, Gen Z, millennials, like they care about issues around governance. They care about fairness in ways that these others haven't, and that's
Yeah.
again, that's the paradigm shift that I think we're witnessing, and I
Yeah.
think it's just a great thing.
That's awesome. I mean, we care about what's being left to us, the markets we're inheriting, the economy that we're inheriting, and um, we have opinions about that. So it's
Yeah,
great to be able to share them, and
yeah,
we the
that's right.
investors, especially facilitating that conversation. Um, I can't. I'm so 100% behind it. And anybody that knows me as pink cats on acid or whatever, they know I was skeptical of you. I was skeptical of Irvin. I was kind of one of the ultimate like Reddit skeptics for a while. And you and I had a lot of great discourse that was, we put it all out there of, what are we really trying to do? What is this really about? Got on the same page about this is about creating change. This isn't just about cliques and sub communities, and it's so much bigger than all of that.
Yeah,
So
that's right.
I'm I'm hoping that the greater community comes around to that as well and realizes that this is the direction to go, regardless of what happens with an individual stock or basket of stocks or what have you, that this is about a much bigger picture. So
Yeah, I hope so. Like I think markets matter, right? I think that you want capitalism to function, and it's not a great system, but it is unfortunately the best one we've figured out so far. It can only function when markets function properly, when
right.
free markets that reflect supply and demand and that are able to allocate resources based on that. And just philosophically, that I'm a big believer in that. Always open to being shown a better system.
Yeah.
But until then, let's understand that like this stuff matters, and it matters because it has real world impacts, right? It affects companies' ability to raise money, which affects their ability to hire people, and that affects people's livelihood. It affects economic growth. It's got these knock-on effects that matter in the real world. And so like we talk about all this arcane stuff about regulation and rules and all of this, but when it comes down to it, it's because we want an efficient economy that hires, that where people have not just jobs but actually good jobs and ones that pay well. And to do that, companies need to be able to raise money and be valued properly, and that valuation needs to reflect the health of the business and the supply and demand for the shares of the company. So
Absolutely.
I think if people can see that bigger picture, it can help to put into context the little stuff that we tend to focus on.
Totally. And I mean, Gary Gensler mentioned having like 1,300 enforcement officials on his payroll, and they still can't seem to get it right. Like it's going to take us. It's going to take the retail army of individual investors to really make this happen, to really make this change. Because there's a lot of jokes about Reddit about how the SEC employees spend their time. You don't have to look far, but whether that's a
good reason, sure.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
I mean, 1,300, when in the grand scheme of things, that's not that much, right? Like there are hundreds of thousands of people, millions on social media that are really tuned in and focused on this stuff. And honestly, like people always say, well, why does the SEC need us to do their job? But it can help. It helps. Like it helps uncover stuff. It helps alert the regulators to issues. And there are other issues in markets, like other securities that regulators probably weren't paying attention to, and the fact that social media was made regulators start to look and start to focus on them, and that's a good thing.
And the more you shine the light on that, the less they can ignore it, right?
Yeah,
I mean, they can't ignore a million retail investors saying, "Hey, look over here. This is really messed up. We don't like this." So,
yeah,
I think that's regulation, of course, is key. We see that in things happening in Ohio. That it's so important to stay engaged with our politicians, with our regulators, and your civic duty doesn't end with your vote. Your civic duty doesn't end with your investment in the market. If you want to be involved in the markets, your duty and your due diligence doesn't end there. You have to create that change and stay involved. Whether it's writing your senator or it's writing your regulator, stay involved and speak up, speak out about these things that you're learning, that you're uncovering.
Saying that democracy is not it's like not a participation sport, or it is a participation sport. Like you can't just sit on the sidelines and watch.
Absolutely.
I should have looked up the quote before.
but
you know what I mean? Like, you can't just like free ride and hope everything's going to work out.
Exactly.
When you do that, these firms just step in, and they are very powerful, and they hold a lot of sway, and
and they make a lot of money off of you not speaking up.
Exactly. So. And there are all sorts of issues around campaign finance and the regulatory revolving door, and everything conspires against the average person. And if we want to change that, which we do, we got to show up day after day.
Exactly. So how do we do that? We make SEC, we comment on proposals, we sign petitions. There's a lot of different ways to do that besides just commenting on posts on social media and things like that. But that's really important too. I mean, sharing things like that on social media is how we got here in the first place.
For
So
sure. No, it is important. And I think like all of that stuff from an advocacy perspective, we can talk about with We the Investors, but like from an urban perspective, I think our view is around education. We want to teach people about these issues and about markets, and we want to level people up. And the more we can do that, the more compelling the comments become, the more involved people can get, the more they can understand where to focus their time and where not to, what's worth it and what's not. And the better they can identify misinformation out there, because there's a lot of it and it's coming from every side. That's something that I have seen so much of. And there are lots of bad players at work trying to do all sorts of things, both monetize the individual investor movements, try to paint them in a bad light because they don't want their comments to hold weight, because they want to preserve the status quo. There's a lot going on right now, a lot of undercurrents, especially as all this comes to a head. And so the best thing for individual investors, I believe, is that they're educated so that they can spot that kind of thing, and that they have a trusted source of data, of course, which is what we're trying to build here. Because we want you to have the best data, and we want you to know the most about markets so that you can protect yourself. Because when it comes down to it, you can't trust anyone to protect you, unfortunately. Right?
You are your own advocate. I mean, I tell my children that. That's a key piece of advice for a life pro tip.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate, but regulators don't operate on that time scale.
Right.
And bad actors know that, and they take advantage of it. And so, the more you understand, the more you know.
Insert rainbow.
Yeah, wait. The better equipped you are to handle that kind of thing.
Absolutely. And I'm really proud of what we're doing with that.
Yeah, me too.
We being the Irvin team, we being the greater community. I couldn't be more proud as someone who was just a memer in Wall Street Bets a long time ago, and it came all the way, to this. It's just, it makes you really proud to be a part of it. So
yeah, that's right.
So, so that brings us to the end of this week. I think we covered a lot of ground here, and I really enjoyed kind of recapping the week. We will be doing this weekly, so we've got a lot of topics that we could still bring up from this. Gary Gensler was talking about, shortening the settlement time. We could talk all day about that. But I really enjoyed just kind of getting to touch base with you today and see what it's all about.
Yeah, me too. I think this is fun, and we've got plenty of time, so we're going to try and keep these to, I guess, 20 to 30 minutes to make it digestible, and we'll dive deep into some issues, and we'll focus on regulation, we'll focus on markets, we'll focus on what's going on at Irvin, and so this will be a fun thing to do each week.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it. So thanks everybody for joining us. Thank you, Dave, and we'll see you guys next week.
Yeah, thanks everyone.